Welcome to Leading Beyond Limits, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys and insights of remarkable leaders who have pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Your host, Angel Radcliffe, who is a digital transformation leader, author, speaker, and financial educator, will lead each episode and dive deep into the stories, strategies, and philosophies that have empowered these exceptional individuals to lead, inspire, and achieve beyond the ordinary. We're about to embark on a journey of discovery and inspiration, and together, we'll learn what it takes to lead beyond limits. So grab your cape, or at least your favorite coffee mug, because we're about to unravel the extraordinary tales of trailblazers who've turned impossible into I'm possible. Let's get started.
I am so incredibly happy to be back here with you for another deep dive.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
We are looking at a specific scenario drawn from Leading Beyond Limits. And our mission is, well, it's a bit different this time around.
Right. We're not doing the usual.
Exactly. We are not going to hand you like a 5-step tactical checklist or some snappy management framework. Instead, we want to sit with the deeply uncomfortable reality this scenario presents. We want to look at the psychological mechanics of our own leadership environments.
Yeah. And that requires a certain willingness to, strip away the idealized version of who we think we are as leaders. We have to move past the management jargon and really step into the unpolished reality of our lived experiences. It is an invitation to be highly reflective, calm, and frankly, brutally honest about what happens when the pressure is actually on.
To ground that reflection, we need to look at the core premise of this scenario, because it hinges on one striking 6-word quote.
Okay, let's hear it.
Culture is what you tolerate.
Wow. Yeah, that hits hard.
Right. And the scenario expands on that by stating, your lowest standard is your true culture. Mission statements on the wall are secondary to the behaviors you allow to persist in the hallway.
That is so powerful.
It immediately shifts the burden of culture from this, vague HR-driven corporate initiative to a highly personal, ongoing set of choices made by the leader in real time.
Well, it forces a confrontation with reality. It highlights the vast disconnect between the printed word and the enacted environment.
Yes.
Leaders often expend an immense amount of energy and political capital on the printed word, drafting memos, defining core values, polishing the language of the organization's ideals. But the printed word is static.
Right.
The enacted environment, what the scenario calls the hallway, that is dynamic.
Okay, let's unpack this. The contrast between the wall and the hallway makes me think of selling a house.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, the mission statements, they're like the glossy brochure of the house, right?
Yeah.
They show the perfectly lit living room, the pristine landscaping, the absolute idealized version of the property. And you hand that brochure out to everyone.
Right. Look how great this place is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the hallway behaviors, the things actually happening day in and day out, those are the creaky floorboards. They are the doors that stick, the leaky faucets, the drafts in the winter. It's the reality you actually live with every day.
Yeah, the lived experience.
Right. And the scenario is essentially pointing out that it doesn't matter how beautiful the glossy brochure is if the roof is actively leaking on your head in the hallway.
That house analogy perfectly captures the mechanism at play here. When a leader notices that creaky floorboard or behavior that violates a standard, they intuitively know that fixing it requires getting their hands dirty.
Yes.
It might require, pulling up the carpet, examining the joists, maybe even uncovering a deeper rot in the foundation. And that is exhausting and unpredictable.
It's so much work.
It is. So rather than initiating that messy renovation, leaders often just decide to write a new brochure. Or, to extend your metaphor, they just turn up the music to drown out the sound of the creaking floorboards.
Wow.
Writing a memo or pointing to a poster requires zero immediate personal risk. You can literally hide behind the laminate.
Because writing the rule doesn't actually require you to enforce it.
Exactly.
The act of drafting a policy feels like leadership. It
Yeah.
gives you that quick dopamine hit of taking action, but it completely shields you from the actual friction of human behavior.
Precisely. The hallway represents the messy, unstructured reality of human interaction. To enforce a standard in the hallway requires constant visibility. It requires stepping out of the safety of the office and into the unpredictability of another person's emotional response. And this brings us to a critical inflection point in the scenario.
Which is?
Well, if we know the floorboards are creaking and we know that relying on the poster doesn't fix the leak, we have to examine why experienced, caring, highly intelligent leaders continue to just walk past the damage.
We rationalize it.
Yeah.
We absolutely rationalize it.
Yeah.
We don't want to admit that we are avoiding the friction, so we come up with a noble reason for our inaction.
Yes, we do.
And the scenario directly challenges one of our favorite rationalizations. It states, when we ignore a small breach of standard, we aren't being empathetic. We are resetting the bar for everyone.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It is. But wait, I want to push back on this a little bit, because isn't flexibility required in leadership?
Of course.
I mean, people are not algorithms. They have bad days, they get exhausted, they make out-of-character mistakes. If a leader comes down like a hammer on every single minor infraction, don't they just risk becoming a tyrant?
Well, sure, you don't want to be a micromanager.
Right. So where is the line between true empathy for a struggling human being and just using empathy as an excuse to let the culture slide?
That is the million-dollar question. And it comes down to understanding the neurobiology of conflict and how our brains categorize risk.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Let's look at the emotional and physiological reality of the moment you witness that quote-unquote small breach. Say an employee consistently shows up 10 minutes late to a crucial alignment meeting, or someone makes a subtle, dismissive remark to a peer.
Right, you hear it happen.
Exactly. As the leader, you see it. Your brain registers the breach. But confronting that behavior requires initiating interpersonal conflict.
And nobody likes that.
Nobody. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, our nervous systems are wired to view social conflict as a literal survival threat. Initiating a confrontation triggers the amygdala. Your heart rate might elevate slightly, you feel a knot in your stomach.
Because you are introducing a live variable. You have no idea if the person is going to get defensive or start crying, yell, or even quit.
Right.
It's an immediate risk to your social standing and your own emotional equilibrium.
Exactly. So in a fraction of a second, your brain looks for a way to turn off that alarm bell to avoid the physiological discomfort of the impending awkwardness. And the easiest way to soothe your own nervous system is to reframe the avoidance as a virtue.
Oh, wow.
We tell ourselves, I'm not avoiding my job, I'm just being empathetic. John is just passionate, Sarah is just having a stressful week.
I don't want to micromanage them.
Yes. We mask our profound discomfort with interpersonal risk by labeling it as compassion for the employee.
So we are protecting ourselves, not them. We are using the concept of empathy as a psychological shield so we don't have to step into the fire.
Precisely.
That is an incredibly confronting realization. If I walk past the manager belittling the intern, it's not because I care so much about the manager's stress levels. It's because I don't want to deal with the 45-minute defensive argument that will inevitably happen if I pull them into my office.
And this is where the scenario forces us to look at the collateral damage of that rationalization.
Right.
When you use empathy as a shield to avoid confronting a breach standard, you are making a decision that ripples outward through the entire ecosystem of your team. You aren't just giving one person a pass. You are establishing the new baseline.
Because, as the scenario reminds us, culture is what you tolerate. So if the team watches you tolerate someone being 10 minutes late every single day, the new official start time for the meeting is 10 minutes late. It literally doesn't matter what the calendar invite says.
Nope.
The calendar invite is the poster on the wall. The actual arrival time is the hallway.
Yes, the bar has officially dropped. And reclaiming that standard later becomes exponentially more difficult because you have implicitly endorsed the behavior through your silence.
Oh.
And this brings us to what the scenario frames as the ultimate crucible of leadership. The act of stepping into the gray area to forge the culture in real time.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The scenario puts it perfectly. It says, true culture is forged in what you are willing to confront, not what you are willing to print.
Such a great line.
But confronting someone in the hallway is inherently messy because you are almost never operating with perfect information. You might see a behavior that looks unacceptable, but you don't know the full context.
Right, you don't know the background.
You don't know what happened right before you walked into the room. You don't know what that employee is dealing with at home. As a leader, you are constantly making decisions with partial clarity.
And that lack of certainty is terrifying for many leaders. In modern business environments, we are conditioned to mitigate variables. We rely on data dashboards, predictive models, spreadsheets.
because they feel safe.
Right. They offer the illusion of perfect clarity. We want to know exactly what the outcome of an action will be before we take it. But human behavior fundamentally defies that kind of modeling. When you decide to address a breach of standard, you are stepping into a deeply unscripted reality.
You can prepare your talking points all you want, but the moment you say, hey, the way you spoke in that meeting was unacceptable, the script goes out the window. It is a live interaction.
Exactly.
So how does a leader maintain responsibility when certainty is incomplete? If you don't have all the facts and you don't know how the person will react, how do you successfully forge the culture in that moment?
It requires a shift away from relying on external management frameworks and a shift toward deep internal self-trust and presence.
Okay, self-trust.
Yeah, navigating incomplete certainty means trusting your own judgment in the moment. It means accepting that you might not have the full context, but taking responsibility for the environment anyway. You have to be willing to initiate the conversation with curiosity rather than accusation, while still firmly holding the standard.
So it's the ability to say, I observe this behavior, it doesn't align with our standards, help me understand what's happening, and then actually being present for the answer, however uncomfortable it might be.
Presence is the key word there. Often, when leaders finally muster the courage to confront a behavior, their own anxiety causes them to rush through it.
Oh, I've seen that.
Right. They deliver the feedback quickly, look for an immediate nod of compliance, and flee the conversation to relieve their own tension.
Just to get it over with.
Exactly. But forging culture requires staying in the uncomfortable moment. It means holding the space, managing your own physiological response, your own fight or flight instinct, and remaining engaged with the other person.
It's about overriding your own desire for personal comfort in service to the integrity of the team. And that is a heavy lift. And it's exhausting to constantly be the one who refuses to let the floorboards keep creaking.
It really is.
It's so much easier to just be the cool boss who lets things slide. But there is a massive downstream consequence to being the quote-unquote cool boss that I think we really need to highlight.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
We've talked about how tolerating the lowest standard resets the baseline for the team. But I want to look specifically at how that avoidance impacts the absolute best people in the organization.
The impact on high performers is perhaps the most insidious consequence of avoiding confrontation. Yes. High performers are highly observant. They're acutely aware of the standards, and they expend significant energy to exceed them. When they witness a leader walk past a breached standard, they don't just see a single isolated event, they see a failure of the system.
Right. If I am an A player and I am grinding, hitting my targets, treating my colleagues with respect, adhering to the culture, and I watch you, the leader, allow a C player to act toxic or cut corners without consequence, what does that do to my internal drive?
It crushes it.
It breeds massive resentment. The silent message you are sending to your best performers is that their extra effort is meaningless.
Yeah.
Because the actual standard is much, much lower than they thought.
It effectively penalizes excellence. The high performer realizes that the glossy brochure is a lie. The cognitive dissonance between what the leader says they value and what they actually tolerate becomes too loud to ignore.
And then what happens?
Eventually, that high performer will either lower their own output to match the tolerated baseline, a form of quiet quitting, or they will simply leave the organization to find an environment where standards are actively upheld.
Wow.
The leader's desire to avoid a 10-minute uncomfortable conversation with a struggling employee ultimately costs them their most valuable talent.
That is the real cost of the empathy trap. You save yourself the awkwardness today, but you slowly bleed out your top talent tomorrow.
Exactly.
It brings us right back to the central tension of the scenario. You cannot point at the laminated values on the wall and expect the culture to magically align. You have to be willing to stand in the unscripted, messy hallway and do the incredibly difficult human work of holding the line.
Which is why sustained, effective leadership is relatively rare. It demands a daily, continuous commitment to not letting the bar drop. You have to enforce the standard when you are tired, when you want to be liked, and when you are operating with only partial clarity.
So we want to bring this directly to you, the person listening right now. Whether you are managing a team of 50, leading a small project, or even just evaluating your own personal boundaries. The scenario leaves us with a very direct, highly personal challenge.
Let's hear it.
It asks, what is the one behavior you are currently tolerating that is quietly damaging your team's integrity?
And as we close our exploration of this scenario, we urge you to resist the instinct to find an immediate tactical fix. Do not rush out to draft a new policy or schedule 5 corrective meetings tomorrow morning.
Right, no quick fixes.
Because that is simply another way of seeking comfort through action. Instead, we invite you to just sit in quiet reflection with that question. Observe your own environment with a renewed perspective. Notice your own internal hesitations. Where does your stomach knot up, and where do you look away?
Just sit with the reality of your own hallway. Consider the silent messages you are broadcasting every single time you choose the safety of the brochure over the friction of the floorboards. What is the lowest standard you are actively endorsing through your silence? We are going to leave you here to think about that. Thank you so much for joining us to unpack this scenario. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for tuning into another inspiring episode of Leading Beyond Limits. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more from our incredible guests, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a remarkable leader in mind who you'd like to hear on our show or any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Remember, leadership knows no bounds, and with the right insights and determination, you too can lead beyond limits. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars and leading with purpose.